Hello there, fellow Plex server owners, fellow Plexers. So, I'm still doing experiments with that Beelink, what is it, EQ13 Mini PC with a N100 Intel CPU in it, which is like a new Celeron. So when I did my first video, I reported that on the drive that it came with Windows 11, I had all kinds of trouble, lots of trouble. I couldn't get a hardware transcoded stream going. I had no luck at all with tone mapping, and I couldn't get hardware acceleration going even with tone mapping off. And it just seemed like I used the word pig. And it was a little piggish under Ubuntu also, trying to use the HTPC client app. And I thought afterwards if maybe it's because I was trying to record everything in OBS Studio. So I tried again today without OBS Studio, and no dice. It just the same horrible response. But I had the much better response just letting it run under Ubuntu and then connecting other clients in the house to it and reporting it all from my desktop PC through the web app. Not quite 5 stable transcoded streams, but 4 were perfectly stable. And when the 5th one started up, it might have caused another stream to buffer. Eventually things settled out, and then there was just the occasional buffering here and there. But if I remember that right, that was mostly with my Android phone and Android tablet as client apps. Well, I've got all NVIDIA Shields going plus my desktop PC. So I don't know what Shield this is, but this is the one in my bedroom. That's my oldest one. It's a 2017 model Shield. This is my Shield Pro out in the living room. And, well, so this must be the tube style in my office or my son's room, and then this is the tube style in my office. Let me pause the stream and find out which is which. Okay, so the top one is the tube style in my office, and the bottom one must be the tube style in my son's office. And then I have the HTPC client app running also, and the tube style in my office is not transcoded. So let's pop that into the same 720p transcode right now. Okay, so it's not started yet. I've got the yellow spinning circle. Now I've done a similar test on different hardware. My regular server on the 11th gen, the mobile version of the 11th gen i5 processor, handled 8 of these easily, and I ran out of client devices. So it's now playing. So I just have to keep talking so we can watch to see if any of these buffer. So there's a little buffering here. Some more buffering, some buffering up here. So basically, that's enough. This is the same experience as under Ubuntu. Whether one is a little bit better or not, I don't know, and that's not my goal to find out. So now we've got some buffering here. So yeah, 4 streams seem pretty stable of this very high bit rated movie. So let me take this out of transcode on my Shield in the office. It's already playing, so you see the reported bit rate is 192 megabits per second. It only reports this high on a new server. Somehow, as a scheduled task, Plex must index this better, because this is normally reported as 104 megabits per second on all my other test servers and my regular one. So I don't know if that would change it if the server was older and this had a different number. Probably not. But this is not the typical stream. 104 megabit per second 4K HEVC movie is just not typical. So I'm kind of pushing things here, even if you had an all 4K library for a movie and TV show library, the majority of it's not going to be such a high bit rate. So if you had 4K movies at 30 megabits per second, expect to do more than what I'm doing here. If you got to transcode all your 1080p media, and on average that bit rate never crosses 20 megabits per second, the iGPU will handle even more transcoded streams. So 4K is the more extreme test, and then I push that extreme by using a high bit rated media to test with. And then the most important thing to remember that I should have mentioned at the beginning of this video and the other one, this whole idea of how many transcode can a machine do is pretty extreme in the first place. The whole idea is to get yourself set up to direct stream. You want all your local clients to direct stream. And if they don't, it's either a local networking or bandwidth issue, or you're using a device way too past its shelf life. Remote streams are different. Some people build powerful servers to have a lot of remote streams. And I also shared this in the group that I think is important. I don't care that much about 4K media. I've got about 80 or 90 movies in a small 4K library compared to thousands in my regular movie library. I posted in the group earlier someplace, or maybe another group, that Sony itself says you have to sit within, I think it was 47 inches of one of their 65-inch 4K TVs to even tell the difference of 4K versus 1080p. I have a beautiful Sony OLED. I love it. Blacks are pure black. It's the most gorgeous picture in the world. But if I had to put a tape measure to where my head is in my chair, I bet you I'm 7.5 feet from it, maybe 9. I can't see the difference with 4K TV, even if I went through a time machine and turned myself from a 61-year-old person to an 18-year-old person. The human eye can't see that. So if we want to use a market term, I am not bullish on 4K media to start with. So if you collect at the 1080p level, you can pump out so many more transcoded streams. But again, all your local streams should not be transcoded in the first place. But when you need the power, it's always better to have it off the iGPU, because software transcoding a 4K stream can choke even the fastest CPU. Okay, so we've got that out of the way. Let me stop the stream in my office so I just have 4 going. And I want to show you something about tone mapping under Windows versus Linux. So if I go into the transcoder section, you see, at least it's new to me, these options. I don't know what they mean past reading the descriptions. If I change to my normal server, those options are not there, but right here instead you have different algorithm choices. And I've read the Plex support article on this. I think basically it says this Hable is probably the best, but it might make things a little bit darker than they are normally. And I've tried all these, and I had the support article open on my second monitor, and sure enough, Hable was the best. But if you're running a Linux server, you can try all these if you have an Intel iGPU and processor. So if we go back to this test server, there is no setting for that. So this might be able to be adjusted to match the same quality you'd get with a Hable algorithm under Linux. I just don't know that. All right, let's just double check. All right, so somebody is streaming off my regular server. Now, I didn't want to do it for the video, but I will double check myself. This Win11 server on the better NVMe drive that I popped into the Beelink NUC, it's a couple versions behind. But I wanted to get through this video to then update it, and if there's a change, I'll make a new video. If there's no change, assume this works under the current version of Plex that's out for November 14th. Okay, so let me go to this and let me take this on a transcode. I've got the volume off on this, hoping to avoid a YouTube strike. All right, look at that normal screen, and then look how much lighter it is. That's a lot lighter. So where are we at? Let's call this the 43-minute mark. So I'm going to back the HTPC client app on my normal Linux desktop. This is not on the mini computer. I'm going to back that out and go to my regular 4K library and find the same movie. It's the identical movie, just a different copy of it. All right, so it's not in transcoding. Let's go to the same 43-minute mark. And I want to show you how responsive this is too. All right, so that's the same scene. Oh, that's in a transcode. So take a good look at it. And let's take it out of transcode. Well, it was a little lighter. Let's use this scene. Let's put it back into transcode. So it's just a little bit darker, and you're really not going to notice this in most scenes, but in dark scenes you will. So let me go to the 25-minute mark. I think that's a dark scene. And again, this is my normal server at 11th Gen i5, a mobile version. Oh, fine-tuning it gets me in trouble. Let me stop trying to do that. Let's take that out of transcode. So I hope you see it's just a little bit lighter, the normal version. I think there's a horse scene someplace. All right, let's wait for that. All right, now we'll put it into transcode. And you see it's just a little bit darker. And you're probably only going to notice it on these night scenes anyway, or the dark scenes. So this is about it with this device. I'm pleased for $189. I wish it had higher quality NVMe slots, and I wish there were two. And actually, I wouldn't mind this just having one regular PCIe 4 slot and a room for a 2.5-inch drive, because then you could put in another NVMe or a rusty drive if you wanted. I wouldn't mind that at all, but for what it is, it's decent. And is it a Gemtech for a mini PC? I was looking over those, and some of the Gemtechs did have that extra SATA connector to fit a 2.5-inch drive, but the specs on the NVMe slot was not good. And that's what I want to talk about now. So in this price range, there's not perfection, and I think this Beelink is better than anything else I was looking at, and it's easy to work with. So here's a picture of the factory drive, and here's a Samsung 970 Evo I had that already had Windows installed on it for the other bench system. Well, here's one slot, and you can't quite see it, but here's the other. You see the standoff for it. There's a little heat sink that screws down and covers part of both of them. It's not in the frame. I got it sitting up here. And it's just pretty easy to work with. There's 4 screws. You see one of them here. The little plate that goes over this has 4 little rubber, well, they're not really feet. They're embedded into impressions. You kind of have to dig them out with a sharp object. They're sticky on one side. They're nothing you need, but you can easily open this up. The memory, unfortunately, is just a single channel, and I think it's limited to 32 gigabytes. My 11th gen NUC can take more, and it's dual channel memory, so I have a pair of matched 16 gigabyte Crucial sticks in it for 32 gigs. That allows me under Unraid to use half of that RAM for RAM transcoding, which probably improves the performance of my server when I compared it to this one. So there's tricks you can do with more money if you want a little tiny PC to run Plex on. Now, I do it with Unraid to point back to the media on my Synology NAS, so that NAS just has to be somewhere in the house plugged into Cat 6, and the NUC can be anywhere you want. You can have it in your office, you can have it sitting on top of your NAS, you can have it next to your TV if you want. And it's small and compact. So there's a lot of versatility in these small devices, and I still think there's a lot of utility for many different types of Plex server owners with a device like this. So I have a couple more videos I want to make on this. I've never done a video where I've connected Windows to a Synology NAS, and I thought that might be fun, and I can do it with this device and with my HP ProDesk with the i5-9500 in it. I can make one install and swap the NVMe back and forth if I can spit it out, and see how both of those bench systems perform. Now, most of you should be familiar with the iGPUs in the 8th through 10th gen Intel processors. The majority of them were the UHD Graphics 630. And it really didn't matter if you had a 8th gen i3 or a 10th gen i7. Naturally, the 10th gen i7 will handle CPU tasks faster, but that's not a huge thing you'd notice in Plex when it's scanning a library. So I've got that experiment, and I think I found a guide to put Plex server as a host install on a Proxmox system to point back to my Synology NAS. I may have already mentioned that. That's something I'm looking forward to. And I'll use both my bench systems to see how that experiment works out too. But to be honest with you, I picked up the 9th gen ProDesk locally for $75. I actually picked up 2 of them for $75 each. No RAM. Oh, sorry. They each had 8 gigabytes of RAM, so I had to buy RAM for each of them to get them to the 32 gigabyte level. No hard drive, and they did have a little K620 NVIDIA card, but I popped that out as soon as I procured a monitor that had a DisplayPort adapter on it, because those 2 HP ProDesk only have a DisplayPort adapter, not an HDMI. But that wasn't a huge deal. I was looking for a 27-inch bench monitor anyway, and I found an HP that was in good shape for, again, $75. So don't discount the used market, but not everybody can trust buying a used PC from someplace, because that's a skill of its own. And for $189, this makes a great little first Plex server to experiment with Plex on. But of course, if somebody you know is selling a 10th gen micro form factor Dell Optiplex with an i3 or an i5 in it for the same money, well, buy that. I mean, just buy the best you can, and this is going to be the best for a lot of people, and I don't think it's going to disappoint too much as long as you understand and are realistic on what you're buying. You're not buying a mini PC that's at the quality level of an i5 or i7 just with a slower processor. They cut the corners a little bit on the connections to the NVMe ports, but I can still successfully do what I need to do on this device. So Windows connected to my Synology NAS, maybe another Docker container video under Linux to see how that works here. I could even do another unraid one, but I've done that already on a mini PC and then moved it to a bigger mini PC. I don't really need to recreate that here. And the Proxmox host for Plex pointing back to Synology NAS. That's kind of my roadmap, and I know I'm kind of rambling, and that's what I do. And we're at 21 minutes, so I'm going to say happy Plexing, and feel free to ask any questions in the thread I post this on or on my YouTube channel. If you have an idea for a different experiment, that might be a fun one to try. Happy Plexing.